Honda surprisingly introduces a school bus-sized reusable rocket with a successful landing. SpaceX experiences a massive explosion during Ship 36 test campaign. What exactly happened? How long will this delay things? And is there a chance that this was sabotage? There's a barrage of Falcon 9 missions this week, including a space funeral, and a new side of the sun has been revealed. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. We are starting off today with some surprising news. Honda made a rocket, and it's not a hybrid. Honda may be known for cars, motorcycles and high-tech light jets, but this week they took a very real step into the world of reusable rockets. And the prototype has some very familiar features. You heard that right, Honda. On June 17th, they successfully completed their very first takeoff and landing test of an experimental reusable rocket at a test site in Hokkaido, Japan. The small test vehicle reached an altitude of about 271 meters, hovered briefly, and then safely landed just 37 centimeters off its target position after a 56-second flight. Yes! The prototype sports retractable landing legs which tuck in just after takeoff and grid fins on the nose cone for steering, very similar to Falcon 9 rockets. Some of you might be asking the same question as a lot of people online. When on earth did Honda start getting into rockets? Honda's rocket program started around 2019 as an internal research effort. The goal was not to build a launch vehicle right away, but to develop core technologies for reusability. That includes combustion, engine control, autonomous flight and landing guidance, building Honda's experience in cars, robotics and aviation. The engine was designed in-house and has gone through multiple static tests since 2021. Honda has not shared specifics on thrust or propellant, but based on the vehicle's size and test altitude, it likely produces modest thrust for now. The focus is on validating hover, landing and burn control. Honda eventually aims to carry up to 1 ton of cargo, but for now the goal is to prove these core systems and reach suborbital altitudes of 100 kilometers by 2029. That is a steep goal for a company that only entered this market with a small tech demonstrator project in 2019. As part of its broader space ambitions with JAXA, which is Japan's equivalent of NASA, Honda's signature energy plan centers on a circular renewable energy system designed for the moon. Solar power would drive a water electrolysis system to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen would serve as fuel and power storage, while the oxygen supports human life as well as being the oxidizer for the hydrogen propellant. When needed, a fuel cell converts the stored hydrogen back into electricity, creating a closed-loop system that could enable long-term lunar surface operations without constant resupply from Earth. So, how big is the rocket? It's about 6.3 meters tall, just under a meter wide, and weighs roughly 1,300 kilograms when fully fueled. For now, the program remains in what Honda calls its elemental research phase, where they are gradually testing one piece of the technology at a time before moving toward full-scale vehicles. It's kinda like an advanced version of the famous Grasshopper, which SpaceX used to learn the needed lessons for Falcon 9 later on. For now, this project is still early stage research, far from a commercial product. But it's a sign that major technology companies outside the traditional space industry are beginning to take serious steps toward building their own launch capabilities. And if Honda succeeds, it could eventually join the growing list of private companies competing in the reusable launch market. Back at Starbase, we have a rocket in active development that is getting closer and closer to full reusability. Starship updates. A giant explosion painted the Starbase night sky bright orange on Wednesday night just after 11 p.m. What happened? Here is what we know so far. After the successful single-engine static fire on Monday, which very much looked like it went just as intended, the next and final test for Ship 36 was the full static fire of all 6 Raptor engines. In the late hours of Wednesday, the test site's tank farm came alive as plumes of evaporated gases rose from the site. When frost lines became visible, it was clear that the tanking procedure had begun and supercooled gas was pumped into the ship under high pressure. Routine work up to this point, a lead up to testing that we've gotten used to by now. Then, just over 1 minute after 11 p.m, normality ended abruptly in an immense explosion. Before we analyze all the info we do have, let's put the good news first: nobody got injured. We learned this from an X post by SpaceX explaining the situation. I quote, "On Wednesday, June 18th at approximately 11 p.m. Central Time, the Starship preparing for the 10th flight test experienced a major anomaly while on a test stand at Starbase. A safety clear area around the site was maintained throughout the operation and all personnel are safe and accounted for. Our Starbase team is actively working to save the test site and the immediate surrounding area in conjunction with local officials. There are no hazards to residents in surrounding communities and we ask that individuals do not attempt to approach the area while safing operations continue." So much for the official word. Early Thursday morning, the fires were out, and now it is time for SpaceX to figure out what caused this violent rud and how to prevent something like this from happening in the future. Fortunately for us, our colleagues from NASA Spaceflight had their cameras rolling as the events unfolded. When looking through the footage frame by frame, we can see that the incident originated from the top of the ship where the payload bay and header tanks are located. It started with a small plume of vapor that just fractions of a second later already engulfs the entire top section of the ship. Let's go frame by frame. We can see in this clip how the payload section of the ship is ripped open, almost looking like a zipper being unzipped. By this time, huge amounts of gas vapor are erupting from the inside. The immense pressure soon found the weakest spot, which likely was the opening for the payload bay door, and fully tore the ship apart even before the second larger explosion set in. Musk gave an update in the morning as well. He said that data showed that a nitrogen COPV in the payload bay failed below its proof pressure. He said that if further investigation confirms that this is what happened, it would be the first time ever for this design. If that is the case, this rupture likely destroyed some pipes, which led to the leaks. In the beginning, it likely was just one of the two gases, either oxygen or methane, that escaped from a ruptured tank or pipe. While oxygen itself is not flammable, it can still cause other materials that burn to ignite more easily and far more rapidly. So in case the oxygen was first to escape, it would easily find something flammable to help ignite, especially since some methane boil-off was also expected to be present. If it were the methane that escaped first, it would not have any problems igniting, as the needed oxygen is obviously omnipresent in our atmosphere. Either way, it did not take long for the gases to find a source of ignition and trigger a catastrophic explosion. But this explosion was only the first one, consuming whatever gases had already escaped the system. At this time, the main tanks were likely still undamaged. That changed quickly when the force of the first explosion crushed the remains of the ship and tipped it over. This is when the second explosion, fueled by the gases from the huge main tanks, occurred and sent a giant fireball into the night sky. We will only learn about the actual cause of the accident in the days and weeks to come, but we can already guess what implications this will have on the Starship program. For one, a launch this month is off the table for good. The incident investigation takes precedence now. Take a look at the shockwave and flames propagating away from the explosion. Keith from Raptor Roost was in a boat and we were in the air together with Redline Helicopter Tours in the morning right after the incident. The pictures from the river and from above tell the story. Massey's will need a sizable amount of repair work before we can expect flight hardware to be tested out here again. Testing out there is without alternative, so any new estimates as to when we can expect a new launch can only start when we know where and when future tests can be performed. Massey's is the only test site SpaceX has at Starbase for upper stages, or ships as SpaceX calls them. The booster for Flight 10 is already done with its campaign, but Ship 37 won't be able to progress until the test site is fully restored to an operational condition. So my current guess would be at least a month of delays, maybe more. That would put Flight 10 toward the end of July at the very earliest. My guess would be more towards August or September, but SpaceX has surprised us before. IFT-1, for example, left SpaceX with a heavily damaged pad. SpaceX launched the rocket without a water deluge plate below the pad, and the result was devastating for the launch infrastructure. And it only took SpaceX roughly 2 months to repair the damage from IFT-1. Everything that followed was an upgrade to the pad before IFT-2. This was far quicker than anyone would have thought possible, so if it comes down to it, SpaceX's crew moves fast. There's another aspect I'd like to talk about. After the incident, messages from viewers reached me asking if this was sabotage. While it is impossible to say from the outside, SpaceX does have options to investigate. To rigorously test the sabotage theory, SpaceX would likely compare Ship 36's telemetry with simulations to spot unexpected anomalies. They could inspect debris for tampering or foreign materials, audit build records for unauthorized parts or deviations, and review security logs for signs of unauthorized access. Though the remote location and strict protocols make that last point unlikely. My opinion, sabotage is unlikely. This does look like the CUPV did rupture a pipe or tank inside SpaceX's nose cone. There are fuel lines right next to electrical raceways inside the nose cone. If a fuel line has a significant enough rupture, it creates a combustible mixture that can easily ignite. The leak doesn't have to be large either. While this is undoubtedly a very inconvenient setback for Flight 10, it isn't a big deal for Starship. If anything, this gave them more things to improve. I for one am really looking forward to Block 3, and preparation work is in full swing. Yeah. What about Pad 2? Construction there has been fast and furious for some time now, and these busy times of the build-up for Flight 10 are no exception. On Monday, Tower 2 raised its chopsticks a bit while the LR-11000 crane was lowered in preparation to lift the orbital launch mount's final manifold for the water-cooled launch deck. Installation of the orbital launch mount's water manifolds has been ongoing for a while, and 3 of its 4 main components have already been placed. And late the following night, the team was able to fully install the last manifold. Contrary to Pad 1, which is blasted with flames on each launch, Pad 2 will have a water-cooled deck on top, protecting the pad not just below, but basically everywhere. As Flight 10 gets closer, we will be watching for signs of Tower 2 being officially ready for ship catching activity. A couple of signs that this is close will be catch points installed on the nose cone of a ship and the tower testing its chopsticks for the catching maneuver. We frequently see Pad 1's large chopsticks doing this, where they are raised to the maximum height, opened and closed again. Speaking of catch attempts, there is a good chance Flight 10 will feature a booster catch attempt after Flight 9 did not and booster 14-2 exploded over the Gulf. Can SpaceX do 4 successful catch attempts in a row? Let me know your best bet in the comments. Do you want to see amazingly cool things like this from the air with your own eyes? Check out redlineheli.com/Felix for a once-in-a-lifetime experience and $25 off flying in a helicopter above Starbase. The Redline helicopter team is waiting for you. They'll show you the same views our photographer gets on his Starbase flights. Give it a try. SpaceX is gearing up for its second Falcon 9 launch of the week from Vandenberg with another mission in its Transporter rideshare series. The first Falcon 9 flight happened on Monday as SpaceX fired more Starlink satellites into orbit and gave viewers in South California a dazzling view of a space jellyfish. Jelly what? A space jellyfish happens when a rocket launches near sunrise or sunset. It's also called a twilight launch. As the rocket climbs into the night, sunlight hits the exhaust plume high up in the atmosphere, causing it to glow and spread into a jellyfish-like shape against the dark sky. Another Falcon 9 mission to launch this week from Vandenberg, California is Transporter 14. The mission will lift off from Space Launch Complex 4E and head south to a sun-synchronous orbit, a type of polar orbit often used for Earth observation and scientific payloads. The transporter missions are designed to carry dozens of small payloads for multiple customers at once. And this flight includes a variety of unique spacecraft. Where a single payload mission is like a taxicab, this is more like a bus. One of the more unusual payloads is a capsule called Mission Possible, carrying cremated remains as part of a so-called space funeral. The Transporter 14 flight also includes Varda Space's W4 capsule, which is designed to return to Earth after a separate mission phase, along with the Maya Sat-1 biological research satellite, which is scheduled to re-enter just 3 hours after launch. In addition to those return capsule payloads, Transporter 14 is carrying several scientific and commercial satellites. That includes NASA's Padre CubeSat, which will study X-ray polarization from solar flares, and 46 payloads being flown by the German company ExoLaunch. Those satellites come from customers across the United States, the United Kingdom, and 13 other countries worldwide. Once launched, this flight will mark SpaceX's 78th Falcon 9 mission of the year and the 5th Falcon 9 launch just this week alone. Before we continue, here's something you can do to help ensure that we can keep reporting these things. Hit the subscribe button to stay informed. Like this video if it brought you value and become a wise supporter for extra content. Secure your access to up to 7 picture galleries per week, satellite, helicopter and ground photos and 3D animations, chat with me and gain more insights on the topic you love. Click the join button, the entire team is waiting for you, you rock! Amazon's Project Kuiper is still working toward its second major satellite launch, but it has experienced a slight delay. The mission, called KA-02, was scheduled to launch from Cape Canaveral using a ULA Atlas V rocket. This flight would carry 27 additional Kuiper satellites into orbit, doubling the size of Amazon's growing internet constellation from 27 to 54 satellites. The first launch attempt was scheduled for June 16th. The countdown reached fueling with good weather, but final checks found the RD-180 engine's purge system running hotter than expected. That triggered a hold and ULA scrubbed the launch for further inspections. ULA and Amazon were still evaluating the problem at the time of recording and hadn't yet announced a new launch date. Teams are assessing whether the rocket can be serviced directly on the pad or if it will need to roll back to the integration facility. Once those checks are complete, a new launch attempt will be scheduled. The second launch is important for Kuiper because Amazon is operating under an FCC license that comes with strict deployment deadlines. TikTok. They are authorized to launch up to 3,236 satellites, but the license requires Amazon to deploy at least half of that, so about 1,618 satellites, by July 2026.
Cool. Yeah.
The rest must be launched by 2029 to keep the license fully active. If they don't meet those deadlines, Amazon risks losing portions of its authorized spectrum, the frequency they need to communicate with the satellites. As of today, there are 390 days left until this time window runs out. It shuts down. As a fun fact, that would mean that Amazon needs to launch a little more than 4 satellites per day on average until then to meet the requirement. Right now, Kuiper has 27 satellites in orbit. Amazon plans to use multiple rockets, including ULA's Falcon, Blue Origin's New Glenn, and others. Kuiper is racing to catch up with SpaceX's Starlink, which already has over 7,000 satellites in orbit and millions of users online. Amazon would need another 60 Atlas V rockets to accomplish this. No one but SpaceX has that capability in such a short time, and Amazon still refuses to launch with them. What do you think? Any ideas? Now here comes a big one. For the first time ever, we now have a direct look at one of the sun's poles. After years of careful maneuvering, ESA's and NASA's solar orbiter has captured images of the sun's south pole. I am emotionally attached to this mission. I was there for the launch on February 10th, 2020 at ESA's control center in Darmstadt, Germany. It was my first trip to see something space-related in person for this channel. I had like 30,000 subscribers. But what's so interesting about Solar Orbiter? Nearly all solar observations up to this point have only seen the sun from the side, along the flat plane where the planets orbit. But to view the poles, Solar Orbiter needs to tilt its orbital plane upward. It does this by using gravity assists from Venus. Each time it swings past Venus, the planet's gravity nudges the spacecraft slightly higher. After several of these passes, it's now reached about 17 degrees above the solar plane, just enough to get the first ever clear view of the South Pole. More flybys will keep increasing that angle over the coming years. This new view comes as the sun is approaching solar maximum, the most active part of its 11-year cycle, when the sun's magnetic field flips. Instead of seeing a clean magnetic north and south, Solar Orbiter found a chaotic overlap of mixed magnetic fields near the pole. That kind of turbulence is expected during a polar flip, but directly observing how it unfolds helps scientists improve models for how the solar cycle works. That's important because the sun's activity directly affects space weather, things like solar flares and giant plasma ejections that can interfere with satellites, power grids, and communications on Earth. The better we understand how the solar cycle behaves, the better we can predict and prepare for those disruptions. To capture these images, Solar Orbiter used a set of instruments working together. One mapped the sun's surface magnetic fields, one captured images of the superhot outer atmosphere in extreme ultraviolet light, and another measured the speed and movement of particles in solar wind. Solar Orbiter launched in 2020 and will continue using Venus flybys to gradually climb even higher. By 2029, it's expected to reach more than 30 degrees of tilt, giving scientists their clearest view yet of how the sun's magnetic field reverses and resets. ESA's Prober 3 mission has created something we've never had before: a solar eclipse on demand in space. Normally, to see the sun's outer atmosphere, called the corona, scientists have to wait for a total solar eclipse here on Earth or fall back on very rudimentary methods on probes. Solar eclipses last a few minutes and they don't happen very often. We need an eclipse to see the corona as the sun is so bright. Try seeing something if someone holds a flashlight in your face at night. Prober 3 allows scientists to create an eclipse whenever they need one and hold it for several hours. How do they do that? The mission uses two small spacecraft flying together in orbit. The first one carries a disk that blocks the sun's bright center, just like the moon does during a natural eclipse. The second spacecraft follows directly behind, using a telescope to observe the sun's faint outer layers. The challenge is keeping both satellites perfectly lined up while they are moving through space down to the millimeter. They stay locked in position using GPS, star trackers, lasers, and radio signals, and once the eclipse starts, they don't need any control from Earth. In early 2025, Prober 3 captured its first clear images of the corona, with more planned throughout the mission. Each time the satellites align, they can create up to 6 full hours of eclipse, far longer than any eclipse we've ever been able to observe before. This gives scientists a brand new way to study some of the sun's biggest mysteries. They want to understand why the corona is much hotter than the sun's surface, how huge solar eruptions form, and how these events can affect Earth. Prober 3 launched in late 2024 and will keep creating these artificial eclipses over the next 2 years, collecting hundreds of hours of new data. It's also testing advanced flying techniques that could help with future space missions where multiple spacecraft need to work together with extreme precision. That's it for today. Before watching the bloopers, remember to smash the like button. Subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A new Raptor design and our Flight 9 shirt are both up. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. And if you want to learn more, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. This test involved firing just one, yes, water electrolysis for orbital operation. I'm sorry, why I'm so smiling like crazy.